This is The Art of Startup War, and I am your sensei, Brian McMahon. Now, in Season 1 and 2, I got inside the minds of startup investors. In Season 3, I brought in entrepreneurs to share their startup journey. Here, in Season 4, we combine both, so you can hear investors critique the investment value proposition of individual companies. You're going to hear how investors make decisions to invest in startups, what makes a great entrepreneur, and how billion-dollar companies are built. So tune in every Tuesday, 10 a.m. on all the major platforms. You can empower your tribe by sharing the podcast, and remember to subscribe, rate, review, and leave us a comment. Good morning, it's Brian. We're back. It's another podcast. This time I got a really special guest, a great mate of mine out of Scotland, Garry Drummond from IOT Secure. And me and Garry have got a really interesting background, actually, because we're intertwined in so many different areas. Garry's had investment from my partner. Me and Garry have been mates for a long time. And probably most importantly, I absolutely adore what his business is doing. And you'll hear me in a few podcasts saying this is something that I believe is going to be a guaranteed couple of $100 million business to $1 billion business. And I'm going to say it in this podcast. This is something that I absolutely 100% believe is going to be a couple of $100 million acquisition or an IPO for $1 billion business. Garry, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Brian. I appreciate it. I look forward to chatting to you this morning.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about cybersecurity, which is a fascinating space. Because when you and I met was a couple of years back, and when we started talking, you educated me on the whole principle of why cybersecurity was so incredibly important. I always imagined, in kind of my naivety back in the early days, that somebody's going to come through your computer because you're going to click on a virus, and that's because you're an idiot, and then you get your virus and then it goes away. And maybe there's some folks who can come in through signals or through the wireless signals or something else, but that's pretty much it. But what I understood with you and what I learned is that actually, and this is when there was this is before 5G. Right now, these threats have been multiplied by 100, but folks can break in everywhere, literally. Any company sitting anywhere on the planet who's using wireless as their principal way of connecting, which, by the way, that's all of us, has got from the thermostat in their fish tank through to the local cell towers, through to the little internet devices that you might put into your computer, through to the internet itself, through to what else, Garry? Everything, right?
Yeah, you're right. There's been a fundamental shift in the industry. We've come from a very wired world. And a lot of organizations still have a very, centric view of their, security via, things on the wired side of the network. But, what's interesting, Brian, is that according to, Gartner, one of the leading industry analysts, 80% of new, IoT deployments are now wirelessly connected.
Right.
Therefore, wireless is the new network, and it's now the new attack surface.
Including phones, right? Because I remember, listen, I'm 50, so I remember the days when we used to sit on our nice little handheld phones on our desk, which had wires and everything. But forget it, our phones are now as insecure as our laptops are on our desk. And that applies to, I imagine, the same amount of companies, right?
Yeah, correct. The phone is really the new computer. It's the new mobile, way of connecting to the data. So, previous, a little bit of background on me. I've obviously been in the network security industry for over 20 years now. I am a certified network security and radio frequency wireless professional. And in previous penetration tests and, vulnerability assessments that I've conducted, we would kind of go after and assess the corporate environment, the computers and the servers and the data centers. Guess what? With the explosion of the Internet of Things, that data has shifted into the cloud, and it's also shifted into the mobile device. Therefore, the more mobile devices that are using to access this data, the attack surface has, significantly, increased and had a major impact on businesses. The The area, that we specialize in is called Cyberphysical IoT security, Brian. And this is the convergence between the traditional IT networks and the new physical world of IoT. And this is an emerging threat vector that has been identified by both NIST, that's the National Institute
I like the way you
of
say
Standards and
threat
Technologies.
vector. I like the way you say threat vector. I feel like I'm in an Avengers movie.
Yeah, so the mobile devices, along with other IoT devices, is this new threat vector that gives us access to, backdooring the wired side of the network. And as we all know, right, IoT introduces a broad range of new risks, including rogue communications, network backdoors, and unexpected data exfiltration to the cloud or wherever the data resides, which is now on the mobile platform. But where I was going with this is that both NIST, Homeland Security, and even some of the leading industry analysts like Gartner have identified, cyber physical security is having a significant risk and impact to businesses. And these are new risks, Brian, that are stemming from unmanaged, unsecured, and misconfigured IoT devices such as rogue cell towers, wireless thermostats, wireless thumb drives, voice assistant devices that are now, like your Echoes that are now showing up within the corporate environment that have had, consumer grade type password protection in the past. There's been an explosion of spy cameras now showing up within the corporate environment that are causing, huge problems. And these are new risks and threats, like rogue cell towers and spy cameras that are 100% off the production network.
And also, Garry, this new world, like you, and even you and I, look, I'm speaking to you now through Zoom Room from San Francisco to Los Angeles. So technically, even through this system, because it's a wireless system and we're using the cloud, there are threats within here as well. Like folks can break in anywhere where people are connecting with each other remotely, or where they have the ability to connect with each other remotely.
No question. And what a lot of organizations, may realize, may not realize, is that a lot of your personal firewalls and your VPNs all start at layer 3 and above, where your firewalls and your IP enablement takes place. Wireless is at layer 2 in the OSI model. And therefore, if you compromise the wireless before the firewall boots up, before the VPN kicks in, before you're authenticated and the encryption starts, you can be compromised.
Wow.
And this is an area that we, specialize in identifying and detecting these types of, risks and threats.
Wow. And I think even the folks who are not technical can pretty easily understand that. A firewall is a big old barrier, a virtual barrier, which is there to protect companies from people breaking in. And a lot of those companies will feel, even listening to this podcast, no, we're safe because we've got firewalls. But in reality, those firewalls are not actually are able to deal with just the magnitude and the complexity of the amount of attacks that can come through from the wireless system itself. And this is why you built 802 Secure.
Yes, that's one of the main reasons. The edge firewall used to do an effective job, 15, 20 years ago, whereby all the data resided on the inside of the network.
Of course.
But as I mentioned earlier, the data is no longer on the inside of the network. It is there, but it's also now on the mobile device. It's now on the in cloud applications. So this perimeter that a firewall used to provide is kind of for edge protection has kind of gone, and therefore this ingress and egress of traffic and attack vectors has significantly changed, and hence that's why you need a new approach to addressing the problem space.
So let's move to the new approach. I do actually want to go back into a little bit about the history about how you built 802 Secure, but before we do it, tell us what solution you came up with and how it protects people. And I want to see what other solutions are out there that could potentially be competitive.
Got it. Okay, so no matter, what report you read, whether it's the latest Cisco report or it's the latest, Gartner report, right? We all know that IoT adoption is on the increase, right? IoT is a business enabler, but it comes with certain risks. So the number one problem that we are solving for our customers is this huge lack of IoT visibility across their environment. And as security professionals, right, we all know you cannot defend what you don't know. But Brian, in addition to this lack of visibility, IoT has ushered in a plethora of new operating systems and new protocols and new frequencies that are just simply foreign to the business owner. You've got new operating systems like Samsung's Tizen. You've got BlackBerry's QNX, which now runs on billions of devices. And organizations, have been conditioned to understand a little bit about Windows, understand a little bit about Linux, a little bit about Android, some iOS. But if it's an operating system or protocol beyond those traditional, operating systems, they just don't understand
and
the
also,
risk,
Garry,
the new risks and threats.
Gary, also, by the way, like you're talking about the large organizations understand that. The small organizations have got no chance. The only thing, look, folks like me want to do, people who've got, they say 5 to 20 people organizations, we want to be able to do our job. And we want people to say to us, Brian, you're okay, you're safe. And if it's physical security at the front door, I want, the guy who looks at the locks to say, locks are safe, they can't break through, you're okay. If it's the virtual security breaking into my network, which I'm now terrified about these days, by the way, because of all of the privacy laws that are coming out. So if one of these buggers comes in, steals my stuff, comes into my network, gets in pretty easy, steals the data of my companies, decides to then put the data of those customers out on the web, I'm liable, because the data of the folks that I was trying to protect is actually out there. So this has actually become a much bigger issue, I would say, not even for the large companies, but for everybody who just wants to be able to give a great service to our customers and have our wireless systems protected.
Correct, and there's been increasing pressure over the year from industry regulations such as GDPR starting to kind of kick in. You've got PCI, more teeth in PCI.
Yep. These are privacy laws, by the way. But yeah.
Sorry, say that again.
These are privacy laws for everybody listening.
Yeah, privacy laws. So what you're really talking about is the fact that these information security teams, in addition to this kind of lack of understanding of the new operating systems and frequencies that are being used, right, going back to the fact that if it's true that 80% of IoT devices are now going to be wirelessly connected, according to Gartner and a few others, then coupled with the fact that there's no assessment tools to be able to detect and assess and prevent risk, right? These new IoT devices, that are being deployed are creating, a real, backdoor into these, assets of these organizations. So this lack of visibility, I would say, coupled with the lack of assessment tools and an understanding of the new risk profiles is creating this, new attack surface.
And then you created what? Yeah,
and before we go there, there was a great study on cyber attacks on IoTs. Networks in 2019, there's been more attacks. There's been a 300% increase in attacks on IoT devices in the first half of 2019 than there was in the whole of 2018. So there's no question the problem is getting worse. So what we developed, what we built based on our expertise, coming from a deep background, 15 years in wireless. We've kind of looked at the applied aspects of IoT, and we know that we're moving away from a wired world to a wireless world. But what we've created is a sensor. It's tied to the cloud. It's called AirShield, and it goes through really best practices of discovery, detection, and response, Brian. So at the heart of our solution, we've built a customized software-defined radio that is looking at the broader RF spectrum, and it's looking at the new attack surface that IoT presents. So our hardware sensor is kind of tied to the cloud. It provides the real-time threat analytics whereby the customer can respond immediately to their first, second, and third line of defense, which is first line of defense, right, is deviation of policy. It's an assessment of the IoT environment, a measurement of what should be against what is. That's your first line of defense. It shouldn't be there in the first place. Do something about it. The second line of defense that this solution implements.
So it looks for anomalies. So the first one is it looks for anomalies. It looks for stuff that's not normal.
looks for deviations of policies, could be misconfigurations and things like that, which leads to really the second line of defense, which is this identification of IoT vulnerabilities or exposure states, and giving you ability to fix them prior to loss, prior to incident. So we believe that being able to identify these deviations, being able to fix these vulnerabilities prior to loss, prior to being exploited, is where we should live. And then thirdly, we've created a mobile app for instant response tracking app that allows us to identify nefarious activities on premise, things like rogue cell towers, spy cameras, or even misconfigured but authorized IoT devices that need to be detected and hunted down. Now, existing solutions today are limited with a fixed chipset in the 2.45 gigahertz. My software-defined radio, Brian, goes to 100, all the way down to 100 megahertz.
Why is that important?
All the way up to 6 gigahertz.
For the non-technological people who are listening, why is that important?
Well, the reason why that's important is that 5G and Wi-Fi 6, these new protocols are being deployed in beyond. For instance, 5G isn't being deployed on 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. It's being deployed in 6 gigahertz in some cases, and it could be deployed on higher frequencies than that. So it's out with the standard 2.4 and 5 gigahertz that we're typically associated with, if that makes sense. So our air shields, our AirO2 Secure Air Shield is this autonomous and non-intrusive wireless monitoring and protection platform that provides this immediate visibility and cyber protection for both IT and OT networks, right? We're fortifying, IT and OT networks from IoT risks.
I got you. So 2 questions for you. Like, number one,
okay.
How secure is this? What percentage of security, if it's possible to tell me, against attack is this going to happen? Because I love the idea of this. I am so sick and tired of either having to get some kind of clean up my Mac rubbish because we've not been watching threats coming through, or something whereby we're dealing with after the attack has happened, and I want to be able to stop it. So how sure can I be that it's going to be safe? And then what makes it unique versus other solutions out there?
Right. Okay. So first and foremost, I think that the way we are approaching the problem by not being on the wired side and being in the wireless spectrum, looking at the entire spectrum, looking at providing comprehensive visibility across all things wirelessly communicating, like things like drones and rogue cell towers and spy cameras. They are 100% off the network. Therefore, if you're on the wired side, you're going to have very limited to no visibility into these new attack vectors. And as mentioned earlier, right, IoT introduces this rogue communication, backdoor access capability. So I think first and foremost, we're approaching the problem from the right perspective. But what makes the solution different and unique is that the traditional Wi-Fi vendors are focused on protecting their networks, right? They're not focused on protecting OT networks or shadow IoT problems. This is an inflection point, that suggests that most organizations are kind of blind to these IoT risks surrounding them because they're, again, have this very wired-centric view of the world. So this AirShield sensor that we've created scans and identifies wireless devices and networks in this airspace to really identify the needle in the haystack, Brian, and we rank an order of severity these risks across IT and OT networks, as well as shadow IoT. And for the listeners, shadow IoT is where organizations or I should say departments within organizations may be rolling out new initiatives that the traditional InfoSec, folks are unaware of. And I'll give you a great example. One of our customers that we, work with, the chef, rolled out 40 brand new internet connected ovens. So he was using his iPads to, fire up these ovens. Who was responsible for the deployment? Facilities.
Wow.
What did the facilities go do? They went to the closet, pulled out the first available switch, because they obviously ultimately these ovens had to be connected to the wired side at some point. But these, 10-year-old Cisco switches didn't support VLAN, VLANs on the back end to the core switch, because that's how they, provided the updates, which created this, backdoor access. On the front end, it was communicating Zigbee on a non-standard frequency.
So hang on. I am going to, because again, for non-technical folks who are listening through to this, I'm going to be the translator. I'm going to be the dumb guy translator. And here's what I'm hearing. Never in our wildest dreams could we have imagined that a dude who is an awesome chef, who is cooking recipes in his oven, could potentially be a victim of an online attack. But because everything is so online right now, from our iPad connected to the ovens, connected to the washing machines, connected to the Alexas, connected to the drones, connected to everything else, that the attacks can come from absolutely anywhere. And because you came in as a first mover advantage, you managed to, and now I'm going to brag a little bit about you, because what I remember the first time we had a conversation, and my partner in the Expert Dojo Accelerator said to me, this is the greatest company that I've ever seen. And it's the greatest company being led by the greatest team of tech professionals and the greatest salesperson. And the greatest salesperson because they have done more with 1/10 of the amount of money raised than competitors have done with years of trying to attack this same problem. And a lot of that falls on your doorstep, Garry, and the fact that you've led immediately from a position of growth rather than a position of, I'm just going to raise as much money as I possibly can. And that growth has meant that you've got, can I say contracts that you've managed to lock down? Because I think it's very impressive.
I would,
maybe leave them off.
Prefer not to mention.
Don't. Well, let's not do names, but let's do
traction.
overviews.
We've got traction across healthcare, critical infrastructure, international data centers. We've got gaming and hospitality. But what we've done is we've been very fiscally prudent, and we've been very capital efficient. We sold over 10 million in contracts last year. We had 100%, CAGR growth, year from 2018 to 2019, and I'm on track for about 200% CAGR.
Hey, Garry, hey, just rather than the acronyms, just explain what CAGR is so people know.
Yeah, it's the compound annual growth rate, or year-on-year growth rate. So we've increased our annual reoccurring revenue model, and we're just expecting our first, not one, not two, but our third DoD order. And this is huge for the company. So what I've purposely done is built a small team as we've been working on our product market fit in different verticals to be able to be capital efficient and ready to expand our business as the market catches up to this whole theme of cyber-physical security. Cyber-physical security was not on the radar of CIOs and CSOs. Certainly in 2018, 2017, it was early.
Yeah.
So rather than raising a bunch of capital when the market wasn't ripe and ready, gave us a little bit more runway to perfect the product and get customer feedback. For instance, we've been securing DEF CON and Black Hat for many years, and that really has been our test bed where we've kind of thrown this solution in at the wild, wild west, and we're seeing some crazy stuff going on during these hacker events in Vegas every year. And we've said, hey, hacks coming in via 900 megahertz, hacks coming in via 800 megahertz.
And by the way,
our software-defined radio needs to be able to detect and assess those risks. So we've been working on this multi-protocol, multi-frequency, on-the-fly demodulation.
And Garry, I love having a podcast with you. I feel like I'm smarter with every sentence. I want to demodulate the vector. But listen, so
I tell you, the most important lesson I've learned as an entrepreneur is that think about it, right? A river cuts through rock, not because of its power, but because of its persistence. And what we've done at IoT Secure is we've kept the team small. We've been determined and focused and persistent on being able to get that product market fit right before we either take on any additional funding, or in fact, if we have the accelerated growth that we're projecting in 2020, I can see us filing an S1 in early 2021, which is pretty exciting.
For an IPO, and that's exactly right. So when I look at what are the attributes, and sometimes in America, and I say this like as an early stage venture capitalist myself, so sometimes in America we're led by the wrong things. A lot of us are led by FOMO. So if we see somebody in a certain school, we'll invest in them. If we see someone who possibly has got, they know somebody, we'll invest in them. If 3 other investors say we should invest in them, we'll invest in them, because that's just the way it's always been done, because we know subsequent rounds of investments are needed. And
Right.
I have such tremendous respect when I see someone like yourself and you combine all of the great attributes of entrepreneurship. Number one, we're not talking about securing small contracts here. We're talking about securing multiple million-dollar contracts in the early stage of a company based on some of the largest Fortune 500 companies in the world believing excessively in the technology that it's going to work. Not a little bit, but absolutely, right? We're talking about an entrepreneur who built it up himself without going through the venture capital normal process of going into the early VCs and just working with one family office and saying, I'm going to build the greatest cybersecurity company in the world that's going to protect wireless devices from all threats from outside and from in, and the perseverance to be able to do it. And I remember you told me that story of you holding the Guinness World Record of the team that had not slept for the longest, which for me says, it's just, firstly, it says a lot about you because you got major issues, but I think you need to have major issues to be a great entrepreneur. For the fact that you didn't sleep for what, 14 days?
14, yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, when I was at college, it was a crazy idea. I think the Americans had the record, 11 days or 10 days or something like that, and I was in getting my lunch in the canteen area, and this guy had spilt all of his lunch and apologized for being an insomniac. And I says, "You can't sleep." I says, "Did you see the advertisement on the games room? Guinness Book of Records, world attempt, like 10 days or something, looking for teams to enter." And I was pretty, fit, a little bit crazy, you could say. And I teamed up with this insomniac. And I play rugby and I play soccer and I'm very fit and things like that. And I didn't team up with anybody in the rugby team, even though they had bigger muscles than anybody. I teamed up with this, guy called John Small, and he was just the hero the whole 2 weeks. This guy just was kind of dying week 1 and managed to catch his second wind in week 2, when I started to kind of go downhill a little bit, and together, right from the very beginning, it took a team effort to get us across the finish line. And the point being is that if you cut me in half, determination and tenacity is just throughout the core. I actually am from Scotland, as you can tell, and I come from William Wallace territory. And every morning I was up at 5 o'clock this morning. I was on the battlefield by 5:30, and there's just no going home until I've kind of slayed my lions, as they say, right?
You also know how to choose teams well, Garry. It's also the other point as well. You didn't choose the big guys that could technically, you would have thought, could have slept longer. You chose the guy who you knew was going to be the best partner for you to bring it through. And I noticed that with the team that I saw you with. And if it sounds on this podcast that I'm very biased towards 802 Secure and towards Garry Drummond and towards this being one of the simplest VC decisions on a Series A raise that I've seen in the last couple of years, it's because it's exactly how I feel. I think you look at characteristics of what can make a deal fail as opposed to things that are really good about a company. And when I look at stuff that can make a deal fail, determination and perseverance is one of them. Obviously, that's not an issue. Being able to choose the right team and being surrounded by the right team is another one. Not only do you have one of the hardest core team of developers and folks around you in the office there, but you also have a board of advisors who are to die for, which shows that you don't just look at the next team, but you also look at the external team as well. And then the next level is growth. Are they going to talk about great innovations and bringing it to the market? Are they going to do it? You've done it. You've already brought in millions of dollars on revenue. We know that for a Series A to go to a Series B, it needs to go to like 10, 15, $20 million in revenue. You're already well on the road to that. So we have the revenue, we have the team, we have the ability, we have the perseverance, we have the actual product fit differentiation. And not only that, we have the final thing, which is my favorite thing in the whole world, which is I hate disruption. I love innovation. I love when there's an innovation which is frictionless. And the beautiful thing about your innovation is I kind of look at 5G that's coming in now that I just want to finish the podcast by focusing on as a new super highway that's being built, right? It's a new highway that's going through our town because our town was congested with traffic. So they said, you know what we're going to do, boys? We're going to build a 10-lane super highway and it's going to be beautiful. But we have a problem. We know that the road itself is too slippery and cars are going to slip off it against the local side road. So we need to use a very special type of tarmac macadam that makes that road safe for all of the new cars to be able to come on and drive safely on that road. 802 Secure is the tarmac macadam on the 5G network that's coming out next. I think your time has come and we are right in the middle of a perfect storm right now.
Yeah, that's a good way to kind of wrap things up. In fact, over the Thanksgiving period, wrote a white paper on the emerging IoT Cybersecurity Crisis. And Brian, I may have kind of already furnished that to you, a couple of weeks or so ago. But I talk about the risks and threats not only with Wi-Fi and IoT, but also 5G. And what's really interesting is if you look at my partnerships that are in place, I have some of the biggest, if not the biggest, telecommunication partnerships in place, looking at securing the 5G protocol. So not only are the partners, one of them is in fact testing it, purchased the product and specifically buying it for the 5G roadmap for their telecom environment. So our mission is very simple: is to be the very best wireless and IoT threat intelligence platform. I think we're very much well on our way to accomplishing that. We've done it with very little cash burn. And I'm very optimistic that 2020 is going to be a great year for the company.
2020, baby.
I'm running a profitable business today. I'm not in any rush. My P&L is positive. I'm not burning cash. I'm actually building a team based on my revenue. And I'll leave you with one other kind of one of the other management styles I could say about myself is if you look at what we did 10, 15 years ago, right? It was 15 years ago, it was all about working 120 hours a week. It was all about ignoring profitability, grow at any cost. It was a feast or famine type business. But today, and what I've realized through the other two startups, the network security startups that I've been involved in Silicon Valley, one of the hardest things in the world is selling an unknown product from an unknown company, and I had a very, successful, tenureship with both those organizations, which resulted in exits. But in 2020, the focus has changed, right? Work is all about, work, however, is all about kind of feeling right and feeling good about what you're doing. Focus is on revenue. Focus is on building a sustainable, profitable business, right? You're hiring remote teams and you're taking care of yourself. So the people that come to work at 802 are feeling part of this, hey, it's not a feast or famine type of business. We're going to build a sustainable company that we can be proud of and just stand on our own 2 feet and be a real, asset to our customers going forward. And that's how I kind of run the company.
Yeah, and testament to you. I mean, for entrepreneurs who are listening to this podcast, that's how you build a company. William Wallace from the beginning. You get loyal fans, you get loyal followers, you get loyal customers, and you build strong revenue based on that. And then when you're ready, which 802 are ready for right now, then you raise, and then you become the biggest and best in your field, which they're well on the way for. And for investors listening to this, it's very hard to actually find a company with all of the attributes that 802 Secure have at the stage and in the space that they're in right now. So our high recommendation from a podcast host whose partner has happily invested into this company and still calls it the very best company that he has invested in. Take it from me. You want to sit down with Garry, you want to meet with him, you want to invest in this company, and we're all going to make great returns from it. Garry, can you finish, please, with giving everybody your email address so they can contact you and the details of 802 Secure, just the website so they can log on?
Yeah, sure. So the website is very simple. It's 802secure.com, so www.802secure.com. My email is Garry, Garry, 2 R's in Garry, at 802secure.com. And if you're interested in my recent white paper on emerging IoT cybersecurity crisis, I'd be happy to send that to you. So Brian, I appreciate the opportunity to talk on your podcast today.
Listen,
thank you very much for the exposure.
I got one word to finish with you on. Freedom!
Very good.
That's a wrap.
I can't beat that, I'm afraid.
Thanks for joining us. If you love the podcast, please empower your circle by sharing these stories. The Art of Startup War is brought to you by Expert Dojo. And remember, we invest in startups, $50,000 checks. Make sure you apply on our site if you are one of those great entrepreneurs looking to bring your company to the next level. As far as the Art of Startup War is concerned, we are back every single Tuesday at 10 a.m. So remember, check out the new episodes. If you want to find out what the investors think, check out season 1 or 2. But make sure you join us every single week.